The Forsaken Planet. The Elenari homeworld was dying. Thousands of years ago, it had been a vibrant planet, teeming with life and a thriving civilization. But now, the once lush landscapes were barren wastelands, scoured by the relentless winds that carried the acrid scent of decay. The mighty cities that had pierced the heavens now lay in ruins, monuments to a forgotten age. Zinra, elder of the Elenari, stood atop a crumbling spire, his azure skin wrinkled with age and worry. He looked out over the remnants of his people, huddled in the shadows of the ancient ruins. There were so few of them left now, their numbers dwindling with each passing year as the planet's resources faded away. They had once been a proud race, masters of advanced technologies and respected members of the galactic community. But when their sun began to fail and their world started to wither, the other species had turned their backs on the Elenari. One by one, the alien races that had called themselves allies abandoned the Elenari to their fate, seeing them as a lost cause, a drain on resources better spent elsewhere. Zinra clutched his staff, the crystal at its tip pulsing weakly with the fading energy of the planet's core. The Elenari had poured all their remaining resources into this last bastion of their civilization, hoping against hope that someone, anyone, would hear their distress signals and come to their aid. But as the years turned into decades and the decades into centuries, no help had come. The Elenari were alone, forgotten by a galaxy that had moved on without them. Zinra felt the weight of his people's fate pressing down upon him, as heavy as the leaden sky above. They could not survive much longer on this dying world. As the elder watched the feeble light of their fading sun sink slowly beneath the horizon, he whispered a prayer to the gods of his ancestors. "Please," he murmured, his voice hoarse with desperation, "send us a sign, a hope for our people. Let us not be forgotten." Little did Zinra know that high above, a lone human ship was approaching the Elenari homeworld, drawn by the faint distress signals that had echoed through the void for so long. The humans, with their insatiable curiosity and unyielding determination, had heard the Elenari's plea, and they were coming to answer it. As the ship descended through the atmosphere, Captain Mira Solaris stood on the bridge, her green eyes fixed on the view screen that showed the desolate surface of the planet below. She had no idea what they would find down there, but she knew one thing for certain. The Elenari would not be forgotten, not if humanity had anything to say about it. The unexpected encounter. The Infinity, a sleek human exploration vessel, glided through the atmosphere of the Elenari homeworld, its hull glinting in the dim light of the fading sun. Captain Mira Solaris leaned forward in her command chair, her brow furrowed as she studied the readouts from the ship's sensors. "I'm picking up life signs, Captain," said Lieutenant Zack Ryder, the ship's science officer. "But they're weak, scattered across the surface." Mira nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. Any signs of advanced technology? Cities, infrastructure? Zack shook his head. "Negative, Captain. All I'm seeing are ruins, remnants of a civilization long gone." Mira felt a pang of sadness at the thought. She had seen far too many worlds like this in her travels, planets that had once been thriving centers of life and culture, now reduced to nothing more than haunted memorials to a forgotten past. "Take us down," she ordered, her voice steady despite the unease that gnawed at her gut. "Let's see what we're dealing with." The Infinity touched down on the outskirts of what had once been a mighty city, its towering spires now little more than crumbling husks. As the landing ramp lowered and the crew stepped out onto the planet's surface, they were immediately struck by the desolation that surrounded them. The air was thin and stale, carrying the bitter tang of decay. The ground beneath their feet was parched and cracked, as if the very life had been drained from it, and everywhere they looked, there was nothing but ruins, broken and abandoned. But as they ventured deeper into the city, they began to see signs of life. Furtive movements in the shadows, glints of eyes watching them from the darkness. And then, as they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a group of Elenari, their azure skin and elongated limbs marking them as unmistakably alien. The Elenari froze at the sight of the humans, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. Mira stepped forward slowly, her hands raised in a universal gesture of peace. "We mean you no harm," she said softly, hoping that the Elenari could understand her. "We received your distress signal. We're here to help." There was a long moment of tense silence, broken only by the whistling of the wind through the ruins. And then, slowly, an elderly Elenari stepped forward, his staff clutched tightly in his wrinkled hands. "I am Zinra, elder of the Elenari," he said, his voice hoarse and trembling. "You are the first to answer our call in centuries. We had lost all hope." Mira felt her heart clench at the despair in Zinra's voice. She couldn't begin to imagine the suffering the Elenari must have endured, watching their world die around them, abandoned by those they had once called friends. "You're not alone anymore," she said, reaching out to clasp Zinra's hand in her own. "We're here now, and we're going to do everything we can to help you." As she spoke, Mira could see the flicker of hope kindling in the eyes of the gathered Elenari. It was a fragile thing, born of centuries of disappointment and despair, but it was there nonetheless. And as she looked around at her crew, seeing the determination and compassion in their faces, she knew that they would do whatever it took to fan that flicker into a flame. The final plea. In the dimly lit chamber that had once been the heart of Elenari governance, Captain Mira Solaris sat across from Zinra, the ancient Elenari elder. The air was heavy with the weight of centuries, and the only sound was the soft hum of the Infinity's portable power generators, keeping the lights flickering in the gloom. Zinra's eyes were hollow, haunted by the ghosts of a once proud civilization. "We were not always like this," he began, his voice a whisper in the stillness. "Once, the Elenari were a mighty race, our technologies and wisdom sought by all the peoples of the galaxy." Mira leaned forward, her green eyes intense. "What happened?" she asked softly, though she already suspected the answer. Zinra sighed, a sound that carried the weight of 1,000 sorrows. "Our sun began to die," he said, "and with it, our world. We poured all our resources, all our knowledge into finding a solution, but it was not enough. And when we turned to our allies for aid, they turned their backs on us." The elder's voice trembled with ancient anger and grief. "They called us a lost cause, a burden they could no longer bear. One by one, they abandoned us, leaving us to face the death of our world alone." Mira felt a surge of anger rise in her at the thought of such callousness, such betrayal. The Elenari had been left to die, discarded like refuse when they became inconvenient. Zinra leaned forward, his wrinkled hands trembling as he clasped them before him. "Captain Solaris," he said, his voice urgent, pleading, "you and your people are our last hope. We cannot survive here much longer. Our world is dying, and it will take us with it." The elder's eyes shone with unused tears, and Mira could feel the weight of his desperation, his fear for his people. "I beg of you," he whispered, "help us. Save what remains of the Elenari. Give us a chance to begin again, on a new world, under a new sun." Mira sat back, her mind racing. She had come here to explore, to discover, not to undertake a mission of salvation. The Elenari were asking for more than just aid. They were asking for a new home, a new life. It was a tremendous responsibility, a burden that could change the course of her mission and the lives of her crew. But as she looked into Zinra's eyes, saw the flicker of hope amidst the despair, she knew she could not turn away. She thought of Earth, of humanity's own struggles and triumphs. They had faced their own existential threats, their own moments of darkness, and had emerged stronger for it. And now, here was a chance to extend that same compassion, that same unyielding determination, to another species in need. Mira stood, her decision made. "Zinra," she said, her voice firm with conviction, "the Elenari will not be forgotten. Not on my watch. We will find a way to save your people, to give you the new beginning you deserve." The elder's eyes widened, and for a moment, Mira saw a glimmer of the pride and strength that had once defined the Elenary. "Thank you, Captain Solaris," he whispered, his voice hoarse with gratitude. "You have given us something we thought lost forever. Hope." Mira nodded, already mentally compiling a list of the resources and support they would need. It would not be easy, she knew. But humanity had never shied away from a challenge, especially when lives hung in the balance. As she strode from the chamber to brief her crew, Mira felt a sense of purpose settle over her, as unyielding as steel. The Elenary would survive, would thrive once more, and humanity would be the ones to make it happen. Operation Exodus. The surface of the Elenary homeworld was a hive of activity, the once desolate ruins now bustling with the efforts of the combined human and Elenary teams. The Infinity had become a hub of coordination, its crew working tirelessly to organize the evacuation of the remaining Elenary population. Captain Mira Solaris stood at the center of the command center, her eyes darting between the various readouts and displays. The task before them was monumental, the challenges immense. They had to relocate an entire species, and they had to do it before the planet's deteriorating conditions made it impossible. "Status report," she barked, her voice cutting through the controlled chaos of the command center. Lieutenant Ryder looked up from his console, his face drawn with exhaustion, but his eyes bright with determination. "We've located a suitable planet, Captain," he said, bringing up a holographic display of a lush, verdant world. "It's in a neighboring system, uninhabited but more than capable of sustaining the Elenary." Mira nodded, studying the readouts. "Good work, Lieutenant. What about transport? Do we have enough ships to evacuate the population?" Raider hesitated, and Mira felt a sinking feeling in her gut. "Not yet, Captain," he admitted. "The Elenary ships are ancient, most of them no longer spaceworthy, and the Infinity can only carry a few hundred at a time." Mira cursed under her breath, her mind racing. They needed more ships, and they needed them fast. Every day they delayed, the planet's conditions worsened, making the evacuation more perilous. She turned to the communications officer, Ensign Mila Chen. "Get me Starfleet Command," she ordered, her voice brooking no argument. "We need every available ship in the sector, and we need them now." Mila nodded, her fingers already dancing across her console. "Aye, Captain." As Mila worked to secure the additional support, Mira turned her attention to the engineering teams working to stabilize the planet's failing infrastructure. The Elenary's advanced technology, once the envy of the galaxy, was now a fragile web, threatening to collapse at any moment. Chief Engineer Zara Patul was leading the efforts, her face smudged with grime and sweat as she pored over the ancient schematics. "It's like trying to hold back a tidal wave with a paper shield," she muttered, her voice tight with frustration. "Every time we patch one system, another fails." Mira laid a hand on Zora's shoulder, feeling the tension thrumming beneath her touch. "We'll get them through to evacuation. We must. If anyone can do this, it's you and your team." Zara met Mira's gaze, drawing strength from her captain's unwavering confidence. She nodded, jaw set with grim resolve as she turned back to her work. As the days turned into weeks, the evacuation proceeded in fits and starts, each success hard-won, each setback a blow to morale. But through it all, the human and Elenary teams persevered, united by a common purpose and an unyielding determination. And then, finally, the last ship lifted off, carrying the remaining Elenary to their new home under alien skies. As Mira watched from the bridge of the Infinity, she felt a swell of pride and exhaustion in equal measure. They had done it, against all odds. But even as she savored the moment of triumph, she knew that their work was far from over. The Elenary would need support as they built their new lives, and humanity would be there to provide it. For in the face of adversity, in the crucible of crisis, the true strength of the human spirit had shone through, and it would continue to light the way, a beacon of hope in a galaxy that too often knew only darkness. A new dawn. The sun rose over the horizon of the new Elenary homeworld, painting the sky in hues of lavender and gold. On a hilltop overlooking the lush, verdant landscape, Captain Mira Solaris stood with Zinra, the Elinari elder. The two watched in silence as the first rays of light touched the budding settlement below, the prefabricated structures gleaming like beacons of hope amidst the untamed wilderness. It had been a long and difficult journey, fraught with challenges and setbacks. But in the end, humanity's determination and compassion had prevailed. The Elinari, once abandoned and left to die, now had a chance to begin anew, to rebuild their civilization under a new sun. Zinra turned to Mira, his ancient eyes brimming with emotion. "Captain Solaris," he said, his voice trembling with gratitude, "there are no words to express the depth of our thanks. You and your people have given us a future, a hope we thought lost forever." Mira smiled, feeling the warmth bloom in her chest. "We could do no less," she said softly. "In your time of need, the galaxy turned its back on you. We could not make the same mistake." The elder nodded, his gaze distant, as if seeing far into the future. "The Elinari will not forget this," he murmured. "Your names, your deeds will be remembered in our histories, passed down through the generations. You have forged a bond between our peoples that will endure for all time." Mira felt the weight of those words, the responsibility they carried. She knew that this was only the beginning, that there would be challenges ahead as the Elinari found their place in a galaxy that had once forsaken them. But she also knew that humanity would be there, ready to lend aid and support as needed. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the settlement below came to life. Elinari and humans working side by side to build a new future. There was laughter amidst the labor, a sense of camaraderie, and shared purpose that transcended species and culture. And as Mira watched, she felt a swell of pride for her crew, for the indomitable human spirit that had carried them through this trial. They had faced the unknown, grappled with challenges that seemed insurmountable, and had emerged victorious, not through strength of arms, but through strength of character. In that moment, she knew that this was what it meant to be human, not to conquer, but to reach out, not to dominate, but to uplift, to look into the darkness and see, not an enemy, but. As the day wore on and the settlement took shape, Mira found herself thinking of Earth, of the long and winding road that had led humanity to the stars. They had faced their own dark times, their own moments of despair, but always the human spirit had endured, had found a way to overcome, to adapt, to grow. And now, here, on this alien world so far from home, that same spirit had shone through once again. In the face of adversity, in the crucible of crisis, humanity had shown its true colors. Not the colors of war, but the colors of compassion, of kindness, of unwavering hope. Mira knew that this was only one small chapter in the grand story of humanity's journey through the cosmos. There would be other challenges, other races in need of aid. But she also knew that wherever they went, whatever they faced, the human spirit would endure. For it was not the cold vacuum of space that defined them, nor the technological marvels they created. No, what defined humanity was something far simpler, yet infinitely more powerful: the capacity to care, to empathize, to reach out across the gulf of space and species and say, "You are not alone." As the sun began to set over the new Elinari homeworld, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold, Mira felt a sense of peace settle over her. They had done good here, had made a difference. And though the road ahead was long and uncertain, she knew that they would face it as they always had, together, united by the unbreakable bonds of compassion and hope. For in the end, that was the true legacy of humanity. Not the stars they conquered, but the lives they touched, the souls they uplifted. And as long as that legacy endured, as long as the human spirit burned bright, there was no challenge they could not overcome, no darkness they could not illuminate. With a final nod to Zinra, Mira turned and made her way back to the infinity, ready to face whatever lay ahead. For she was human, and the universe was wide and wondrous, full of infinite possibilities. and she would meet them all with an open heart and an unbreakable spirit, ready to light the way for all who followed.